Hello there, and welcome to Talking Nerdy, the show where we take various story arcs and events from current comics and we cover them. I'm your host, Obi-Wan Jabroni. Now, for today's story, we will be covering The Death of Doctor Strange, number 1 through 5, written by Jed MacKay, with art by Lee Garbett, and colors by Antonio Fabula. Doctor Stephen Strange is the world's greatest neurosurgeon and Earth's Sorcerer Supreme. He defends our planet from the supernatural and interdimensional threats no other hero is equipped to handle. But what would happen if he unexpectedly died? Who would protect the Earth and keep the mystical evils at bay? And most importantly, who would kill Dr. Stephen Strange? So, with that, let's start talking nerdy. First up, we have The Death of Doctor Strange number 1, Chapter 1, The Strange Day. And we open in the Sanctum Sanctorum, and we get a montage of a typical day for Doctor Strange, as he gives an internal monologue saying, Cuchelli the Deathless. I've always been fascinated with him. A character out of a Slavic legend. Kochi was immortal, and they said. The reason for this was he removed a small piece of himself, a small piece of his life, his soul. And so long as nothing untoward happened to his soul when he could not die, then he could not die. He took that soul, his soul, and he hid it in a needle. He hid this needle in an egg, and the egg in a duck, and the duck in a rabbit, and the rabbit in a chest. And he hid the chest somewhere deep and dark where no one might find it. And in this way, Kochi was immortal, deathless, and went on to pester various protagonists of Slavic myth. I was a child when I first encountered the myth of Kochi. It stuck with me. The story of how I ceased to be a surgeon, the obsession with money, status, and fame, and the accident is well known at this point. But none of that mattered to me when I began my path to medicine. No, my motivations then, well, some of that came from Kochi. I wanted to cheat death. There was an element of arrogance there, certainly. A human life held in your hands, and I had such hands. Recent events have returned those hands to me. I have returned to surgery, my first love, my first art. I spent so much time as a mystic, a sorcerer, and a superhero that it all feels new to me again. I find myself getting nervous like I did when I was a student. When I was fresh to the knife, when I had just entered into Kochi's pursuit to preserve life with all artifice and skill I could muster. But my nerves don't matter. My hands know what to do. Like faithful hunting dogs, they keep me kept inside for too long. Now loosened once more to do what they were made for. There is a clean line, mundane beauty in it, unlike anything in magic. But I set aside my exhilaration, my ego. Magic taught me one lesson. Medicine never did. Humility. A life was saved today, but I have other patients. Decades passed through my practicing medicine, but I never stopped being a doctor. I am the Sorcerer Supreme, and the world is my patient. And, sorry. And he arrives on a street to find a man on his knees, burning and screaming. It's dying. I can hear the screams. Strange approaches and tells the nearby police officers to stand down. And he uses the Eye of Agamotto to see that the man is linked to the dying dimension called Cinnabus. And he tells the man to remain calm as he uses his magics to cut the bond and seal off the other dimension from the man. The flames around the man disappear, and Strange tells the cops to get the man to a hospital immediately, and he flies away. And we see Strange handle a few more odd jobs, such as teaching a class, fighting off demons with the X-Man magic, and taking down the wrecking crew. And finally, towards the end of the day, he goes home to relax, and we learn Wong and Bats are both gone. And we get another internal monologue, saying, I number many magicians amongst my acquaintances, but none of them have my responsibilities. Whether with my once again dexterous hands, or my dexterous mind, or the mighty magics at my disposal, my work never ends. My responsibilities never end. My life gives gifts every day. I have seen and done things that one person, living or dead, has ever matched. I have met incredible and unique people from across every known universe, made friends, companions, even lovers, but I have also lost them. Kochi decided to cheat death, but to do so, he still needed to carve his own soul. Kochi could live forever, but a man without his soul, can he truly be said to live? And his thoughts are interrupted by a knock on the front door. And Strange gets up and answers it. And we don't get to see who is at the door, but Strange knows them and asks what they are doing here. And the person blasts him with magic and sends him flying backwards, and he is pinned to the wall, unable to do anything. And as the attacker pulls out a knife and approaches Strange, we get another internal monologue saying, "It's good that my friends are not here. They couldn't help me. This is beyond them. I want them here with me, though. This power arrayed against me, its overwhelmingly inconceivable power, is familiar to me, terribly so. This power should not exist. I want my friends here, even though I'm glad they aren't. It's selfish. I just don't want to die alone." And that takes us to Chapter 2, The Lonely Death of Dr. Stephen Strange. Across all dimensions, everyone tied to magic, the magic of Strange, or Strange himself, feels his death and the balance shift as reality loses its Sorcerer Supreme. Those close to him rush to his aid, only to find his corpse in the living room with a knife in his chest and his hands cut off. Strange's Avengers ID goes off, and Zelma answers it, and we learn that chaos is breaking out across the planet as barriers and protections fell with Strange's death. And as Kat gives them a rundown, we get an internal monologue from Doctor Strange saying, "Kochi the Deathless, a man who severed his soul and hid it so that he might live forever. A stunt that I never achieved, but once, when I was much younger, in case I might be killed in the future." And a loud pop followed by a bright light stops everyone, and they turn to see a very young Doctor Strange walk through a portal and say, "Zounds! If I have been released, then the worst must have happened. We must move quickly. There isn't much time. Tell me, what year is it?" And that ends our first issue. Leading us to The Death of Doctor Strange number 2, Chapter 3, The Dance of the Warlords. And we open with a montage of four magical warlords racing around the planet, and a monologue saying, "Agamon was the first to strike. The Gobi Desert shook as the vast swath of the purple dimension was transplanted across the shattered barrier. Dagoth was next. He raised the sunken city of Kalamesh from the seafloor off the coast of Cornwall, causing due archaic blood depths from the old families who still remembered their ancient allegiances to him. Taboro claimed his ancient territory in the jungles of Peru, while Umar, never one for socializing, manifested a portion of her kingdom in our Antarctica. Shit, sorry. Um, Meanwhile, back at the Sanctum Sanctorum, Strange approaches his own corpse as everyone else is starstruck and confused. Strange stands up and says, "I fear there is some of you I do not know. I apologize for the strangeness of my entrance. I presume that I have been murdered." "Ah, Wong, excellent. And Mordo, what a surprise to find you here with my corpse. And you, Lickspittle, Calcilius, too. Where is your mustache? You look like hell, old man." And Callius starts raving about how Strange exiled him to the purple dimension for years. And Strange continues, "The purple dimension. I fear that was after my time. It comes down to time, Carl. 7 days to be precise. 1 week. In what I can only assume was many years ago to you. All. I severed 1 week from my personal timeline, cut it from my lifespan, and I hid it away, secret from all, like a needle, inside an egg, inside a duck, inside a rabbit. A contingency, a precaution, so that if I ever were to die, a part of myself, a temporal remnant, would ensure that my affairs were put to order, that my killer be brought to justice. And he is interrupted by the Avengers card, and he answers it and tells Cap that his Strange is dead, and that the Sorcerer Supreme can handle the insurrections, and he turns to ask who this time's Sorcerer Supreme is. That takes us to chapter 4. Chapter 4, The Three Mothers. They've informed him that he was the Sorcerer Supreme, and Strange tells them that without a Sorcerer Supreme, the Warlords attacked as soon as the barriers fell. When a telepathic call is sent to Strange asking for help, and he rushes outside just in time to catch an exhausted and bruised up Clea. She thanks him and immediately realizes that it is not her husband and jumps from his arms. Wong asks what happened, and Clea says, Agamon, Umar, Tibero, the rest, they are not invading, they are fleeing. Fleeing from the Three Mothers, the Word, the Weird, the Crown, the Crawling. They have the scent of me, they're hunting dogs, and their child's appetite will never be sated. And a portal opens up, and the Three Mothers step through just as the Avengers arrive. And Strange tells them to leave and tells the Three Mothers to leave. And Mordo takes this chance to immediately teleport the fuck out of there. Now, the Weird Mother charges with a sword, and the Avengers charge and attack them. The Three Mothers quickly get the upper hand and start to take down the Avengers one by one. When the Weird finally calls her sisters to stop, and she says, Keep the woman, morsel magi. We will return for her in good time, as we will return for you all. After all, anticipation is the best seasoning. And they teleport away, leaving the mages and Avengers beaten and bruised, laying on the ground. And that ends this issue. Taking us to Death of Doctor Strange number 3, Chapter 5, The Peregrine Child. We open at Avengers Mountain, and we see Doctor Strange and Jane Foster running an autopsy on the dead Strange's body. Meanwhile, in another room, Clea gives everyone a briefing, saying, The Three Mothers. They came from beyond the Outer Planes, 3 warrior queens of unknown lands carving their way across the dimensions. An army of 3 whose mandate is sheer annihilation. Land after land fell to them. No king or queen could stand against them. No warlord or warlock. Entire armies were laid to waste in their need to satisfy their child. The Peregrine Child is hunger. It hungers for magic. It is the apex predator of the magical food chain. A tomnivore with an appetite that cannot never be sated. It is and its favored prey, powerful beings of magic, like the warlords, like me. No one knows its origins. Some claim that it is not a creature at all, but a feeder extrusion of some vast nth-dimensional hyper-creature. The only part of it our minds can perceive in material space. Its mothers are its vanguard, tracking down powerful magical beings so that it might feed. No one knows how such a warrior came to be hunting dogs for such creatures. I suspect their stories are of great tragedy. And Strange and Jane enter the room, and Strange tells them that he was killed by something magical, and his soul has been stolen as well as his hands. Without his soul passing on, no one is able to take up the power or mantle of Sorcerer Supreme. And Iron Man says the Avengers and other teams will handle the attacks while Wong Wong and Clea find out who did this and get Strange's soul back. And that takes us to Chapter 6, The Knife of Memory. Later at the Sanctum Sanctorum, Clea casts a spell to control a spirit and send it looking for the Cloak of Levitation and the Eye of Agamotto. Her and Strange sit down and wait, and Clea says, "You made me forget about you, you know. We had overcome our problems. We had found again what had brought us together in the first place. That space where two souls overlap. All of that was ours again, Stephen. And then you stole it. Stole my every memory of you. Made yourself a stranger to me. Oh, you had your reasons, of course. You had to pay the devil for helping to rebuild the universe. It was not something you did willingly or lightly, I'm sure. But then you died, and the devil restored those memories to me at the moment of your death, at the moment when they could only bring pain, because in that there was opportunity for even greater suffering. And now, here you are, as cold and arrogant and brilliant as when I first met you, as when I first began to understand how our souls fit together, and when I first thought that I could love you, and you don't even know me." And Strange apologizes for the stupidity of his future self, and Clea kisses him. He pushes her off and says, "No, you must grieve, not try to replace me." And they are interrupted by the spirit's return, and it tells them that it has found both items far away from here. Clea asks where, and it says, a place called Castle Mordo. And that lost my spot, sorry. Okay. And that takes us to Chapter 7, Invasive Surgery. Later at Castle Mordo, Strange, Clea, and Wong burst through the doors of the castle and take out every guard they see as Strange yells out, "Mordo! You up to your old tricks again, Carl? Did you think I wouldn't sniff you out? Did you think I would not notice that the Eye of Agamotto and the Cloak of Levitation left behind were poor counterfeits? You've never been strong enough to come after me on your own, but you would borrow power, wouldn't you? Muling to Dormammu for the strength to face me. But it wasn't the stink of Dormammu's magic that was left on my body, no. The third eye perceived the magical signatures of several powerful beings. Agamon, Tibero, Uma, and Dagoth. You borrowed power from not one, but four mighty warlords, sold your soul again and again, all just to see me die. You absolute coward. You couldn't help yourself, could you?" And Strange sees Calcilius and grabs him, pinning him to the wall, and asks where Mordo is. Calcilius is terrified and points to a door and stutters out, "In there." Strange drops him and approaches the door, saying, "I implied earlier that it was no surprise to see you standing over my corpse, Carl. I was being fictitious. It was a surprise. It was a surprise because I could not believe that over all those years, after all your atrocities, I hadn't killed you yet. But don't worry, Carl. That is a mistake I intend to correct immediately." And that ends this issue. Leading us to Death of Doctor Strange number 4, Chapter 8, Mordo. We open in Castle Mordo, and Baron Mordo bursts from his chamber and throws Strange's Cloak of Levitation and Eye of Agamotto at Strange's feet, and says, "No, I am Baron Carl Amadeus Mordo, Lord of Castle Mordo. I have done much evil in my life. I have murdered, stolen, and consorted with demons. I feel remorse for none of it. I only regret in life my single lament, that I am innocent of the murder you accuse me of, and I will not be spoken to in such a manner in my own home. You are a fool. Here's your baubles. I found them shortly before you arrived, hidden here in my home. I have been made to appear guilty. Presumably, whoever did kill you would like to see me punished for it. Ask yourself this, brilliant Doctor Strange. Do you really think, do you really believe that I had finally killed you after, as you said, all these years, all these atrocities, that I would lie about it, even if my life be forfeit? And Strange thinks about it for a moment and says, damn it, and storms away, saying, no, no, you wouldn't. Taking us to Chapter 9, Down and Out on Bleecker Street. Later at the Sanctum Sanctorum, Captain America tells Strange, Wong, and Clea that they have taken care of most of the issues, but there is still no sign of the three mothers. And Strange ends the call and throws his Avengers card across the room, frustrated. And then he says he has no idea where to even begin. And Clea and Wong tell him he will find a way. And they leave him alone with Bats. Bats walks up to him and asks if he wants to go for a walk to help clear his head. And we switch to later in Central Park. Strange and Bats walk down a sidewalk, and Bats asks who hated both him and Mordo enough to kill and frame them. And Steven says, someone I hurt or thwarted at the very least. And someone who hates Mordo because not only was Carl framed, my murderer, the not so secret wish of his heart, was taken from him. And who would play cat's paw for the warlords in return for such satisfaction? Oh, oh, come on, Bats, we have a lead. But first we must gather all the players together, because this is a mystery, little friend, and that is how it is done. And they both fly away to the sanctum, and he gathers Clea and Wong, and tells Wong to gather all the magicians and teach them a certain spell, while Clea summons the warlords, and they both agree to help. And that takes us to Chapter 10, The Drawing Room. Later in Antarctica, Strange, Magic, and Clea arrive at Umar's castle and meet with the warlords as well as Mordo and Calisius. Strange approaches them and says, Dread warlords, Carl, you all know who I am. You all know what has been done to me. And you all know your own culpability in this crime. I will endeavor to do my best to explain it. After all, who does not love a murder mystery, and the best ones end the same way, with all involved gathered together while the detective reveals the truth? It was simple for me to understand how I was overcame. The powers of four dread warlords, your good selves and the late unlimited Dagoth, conjured and channeled through a pawn. Umar, Tibero, Dagoth, and Agamon. The four of you hated rivals. You would never work together. The concept is anthemia, and it is as far outside your nature as love, charity, or kindness. But overriding your cruelty, your hatred, and grasping for your power, self-preservation. The Peregrine Child and the Three Mothers, a predator which cast you into the uncomfortable role of prey. So escape to Earth. Where else in all the dimensions could you find such a being as the Avengers, the X-Men, the Fantastic Four? If anywhere offered safe harbor, surely it must be Earth. But no ragged refugees were you for. You would flee to Earth, but you would take your kingdoms with you. And for that, the barrier must fall. There are ways around the barrier. It is far from perfect. I am told the Roxxon Corporation subverted it in aid of invasion just recently. But that was a long time in the making. You were in a hurry. The Sorcerer Supreme must be slain. A pawn must be found. And so, you found one. It was a hook richly baited. After all, the ritual of my murder, the removal of my hands with them, and with them, my soul and my power. Any magician would be richly served by adding that to their own power. And this was personal as well. This was someone who bore me ill will for what I had done to them. Two birds, one stone. But there was a third bird involved. Carl was framed for my murder, and having that murder stolen hurt him more than anything else could have. I had thought my investigation had reached a dead end after all. If this was a grudge that was after my time, how would I even know of it? But then it was placed directly before me. I was told that I exiled a man into the purple dimension, a man who served a dire enemy of mine. That exile to a land of cruelty and suffering was one thing, but how much more keenly must it have hurt when that man's master, to whom he had given his unwavering loyalty, his blood and tears and very soul, made no efforts to save him. Would he not wish to hurt his master the way he had been hurt, the way he had been discarded like a broken tool of no consequences? Isn't that right, Calisius? And Calisius starts to laugh and takes off his gloves and says, God, Strange, you really do enjoy hearing yourself talked. You are correct, of course. This has been such fun. But the game has run its course. I will make my faithless master, Baron Carl Amadeus Mordo, squeal with all the agonies of the purple dimension. And then I will kill you again with your own power. And meanwhile, outside the castle, we see the three mothers approach Umar's castle with their child to kill the warlords. And that ends this issue. Taking us to our final issue, The Death of Doctor Strange number 5, Chapter 11, Physician, Heal Thyself. We open in Umar's castle, and Caecilius attacks Strange with the spell after spell, and Strange deflects each one until he mutters a spell of his own. Calisius falls to his knees, screaming, and his hands start to glow, and Strange says, You hold my very soul in my own stolen hands, Calisius, and still you do not know who I am. I am a doctor. I cast the spell that could get through your wards, the one spell that you never thought to prepare against, a healing spell, a spell of regeneration, one that requires still living flesh and a soul for a base, and raw materials to be consumed with which to reconstruct. I am a master of black magic, Calisius. I am inhuman when it is required. Perhaps in time I will grow to be kinder, more merciful. In fact, I believe that I do. But you murdered that man. And Calisius's whole body glows, and he is transformed into a reborn Dr. Stephen Strange, Sorcerer Supreme. And that takes us to Chapter 12, The Battle of Antarctica. Outside Umar's castle, the Avengers and X-Men are trying to hold off the three mothers, and we get an internal monologue from Doctor Strange saying, My younger self orchestrated a war. The X-Men and Avengers came to his summons. The warlords had no choice but to join our cause as the result of his machinations. I do not remember being so accomplished, so calculating, so cold, but ice may melt even in Antarctica. I live again, but I know too well that my arrogant self does not. There is always a price. And at what price comes the life of a sorcerer supreme? Was Calisius's death by transmutation enough? I know that it wasn't. Death is a misser. She lets nothing go that is not paid for, and dearly. But I can't think of that now. My own death, my own life is merely one of the many lives and deaths in the balance of this battle. Heroes fight for my cause, in my name. Human, mutant, God. They have come to Antarctica to do battle with creatures they know they cannot defeat. They have come to stake their lives in a battle that must be fought, to face down their own deaths simply because it must be done. Because that is what they do. That is who they are. The Avengers have best battled against hopeless odds time and time again. The X-Men have fought for their people year after year. They are the greatest warriors our planet can summon. But while this battle would be lost without them, this is not a battle that will be won by warriors. It is a war of wizards, a battle of magicians, sorcerers, sorcerers supreme. And the five sorcerers supremes, Doctor Strange, Agumon of the purple dimension, Tibero of the sixth dimension, Magic of Limbo, and Clea of the Dark Dimension take to the sky and form a pentagon as they start a spell to banish the three mothers. Meanwhile, young Strange charges into the Peregrine Child in his astral form and unleashes his full power, causing the child to overload with power. And as soon as the child is weakened, the Sorcerer Supremes use their collective spell to scatter the three mothers and the child to far-off dimensions to die, powerless and alone. And that takes us to the final chapter, Chapter 13, The Death of Doctor Strange. As the smoke clears, Doctor Strange and Clea embrace, united once again, and Strange says, "Clea, my love, the younger version of myself before we went into battle. He made a demand of me. He called me a fool for ever letting you go. He told me that I must keep you for as long as I can, for as long as you will have me. And he was right. But he was also wrong, Clea. My life cannot be stolen back from death so easily. She will take back what is hers. You have my heart, and you always will. But I must ask you to take upon yourself something else. It is unfair in a life that has already been unfair to us, but I can trust no other." And she whispers, "Of course." And they kiss, and as they do, Doctor Strange fades away to dust, leaving Clea alone, holding the cloak of levitation and the eye of Agamotto, as Earth's new Sorceress Supreme. And that ends our story. I hope you enjoyed this week's video. Join us next week as we cover the X lives and X deaths of Wolverine, Part 1. Thanks for watching. As always, remember to like, subscribe, and share our video to help spread our brand through the world. Also, leave a comment down below. Feedback is always welcome. You can also find us on the Jabroni Nerd Network Facebook page. So, until next week, guys, keep talking nerdy.